Senator Ben Nelson, thanks so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you.
You may remember a point early in the Clinton presidency when your former colleague Bob Kerrey had a heated discussion with President Clinton about whether or not Bob Kerrey was willing to take down Clinton's presidency out of opposition to his economic plan. Ultimately, Clinton got his plan. How do you feel about Barack Obama succeeding? Are you willing to take down his presidency if you don't support his health plan, his energy plan, his financial regulation plan?
I don't think whether I support his plans will matter one bit as to whether or not his presidency will succeed. As to my intentions for his success, I wouldn't have taken the leadership role that I did in the stimulus package if I didn't want to see the presidency succeed. Why do I want to see his presidency succeed? Because that's the way the country succeeds. So everything that I'll do will be based on what I think will be best for the country, and that will be true as to how I decide to vote on health care, how I decide to vote on cap and trade or climate change legislation or any other legislation. I always put the state of Nebraska and the country ahead of party. Always have and I always will.
But you'd agree, wouldn't you, that if health care, his top priority, does not pass in a comprehensive bill, that will cripple his presidency?
Well, I don't know that we should conclude that some form of health care reform won't pass. I believe that some form of health care will pass. What form will depend on an awful lot of factors. It'll depend on what Senator Reid has put in the place of the merged bill, how it scores, how it's treated on the floor, whether there are amendments taking things out, putting things in, and at the end of the day, whether there's sufficient support, not just of mine, but of others to be able to vote for it.
But you don't have any doubt then, it sounds like you don't have any doubt, that a comprehensive health care bill will pass the Congress this year?
I think some form can pass Congress this year. It will depend on what, quote unquote, it is. And how whatever is proposed and presented is dealt with, what's taken out, what's put in, and all that is important in the final product. Now, if it's a product that doesn't, that raises taxes, that isn't deficit neutral and has a lot of other challenges within it, that probably wouldn't pass.
Well, you say raises taxes. Some taxes have to be raised to pay for any plan, right? You're not saying that a health care plan couldn't have any tax increases in it.
I don't think it should have any tax increases in it. Of the excise tax that's in there, the excise tax that's across the board.
The one in the House bill?
No, the one in the Senate bill. The excise tax on insurance coverage, because that'll pass right on to the consumer, to the insured. So I don't think that'll, at the end of the day, I don't think much of that will be in the final copy of the legislation.
Although all the health economists say that tax on high-value insurance plans is one very important way to bend the cost curve, which the president says he wants to do.
Yeah, I've heard that.
You don't believe it?
Well, I don't know that is going to be palatable at the end of the day in terms of getting votes.
The Nancy Pelosi in the House laid out her bill today. It does not include the excise tax on insurance companies, but it does include a tax on $500,000 incomes for individuals and $1 million incomes for families. Is that acceptable to you, or more acceptable than the tax on insurance companies?
It's not acceptable in the Senate version. I don't see that. If that had been an acceptable approach, it would have already been in the plan. Well, I don't know that whether it's in the plan that Senator Reid is presenting, but I believe that it is not. Certainly not at this point.
What in your mind are stoppers, things that when you think, knowing this place, you think either because you oppose them or you know other senators oppose them, simply can't be in the final product to have it pass?
Well, it's very difficult to see how the Class Act, as it was in the Help Committee bill, would make it. I think also any kind of public option that would undermine or destabilize the private insurance that 200 million Americans currently have, I wouldn't see that that would make it. But some version, such as an opt-in for the states with a state option, that could very well be in there. I think the tax issues are very difficult, very problematic, and I'm just not sure they'll be in there at the end of the game.
But you're not saying, I don't hear you saying that you will absolutely commit to voting against any bill that has any tax increase in it.
Well, I'll say it this way. I'm looking to find a way to vote for health care reform because we need it. We need it on the side of bending the cost curve, reducing the growing costs of health care premiums. They've shot up, really have doubled in the last 8 years, and they'll double again in the next 8 years if we don't do something there. But what I think we have to do is be cautious about tax increases, because whether it's coming out of your left pocket or your right pocket, if it's increasing your costs, it just seems to me to be counterproductive. So that's why I'm very cautious, very careful about anything that has to do with raising taxes or something that would not be deficit neutral or would not reduce the deficit over some period of time.
Sounds to me as if you think two things: that a health bill will pass and that you'll end up voting for it. Is that what you think?
I don't know. I can't make my mind up in advance. I've been asked what would I do on a motion to proceed.
You've been around here a long time. You know how these things work, the give and take that goes on.
Mm-hmm.
You've got a feel for the rhythms of this place. Your expectation is, am I right, that
hope.
it's going to pass and that you're likely to end up having it be something you can support?
I'm not sure that that's the case. Matter of fact, I'm not able to tell you right now whether I can vote for a motion to proceed because I haven't seen the bill, haven't read the bill, and I haven't seen a score. So I don't make those decisions in advance. But I can tell you this. Would I, or I'll answer a question this way, would I vote for a bill that I thought raised taxes, added to the deficit, increased costs as opposed to decreasing costs? The answer is yes, I would vote against a bill like that, and most likely would. And if I thought that it was going to destabilize the 200 million Americans' private insurance today, absolutely I would vote against it.
But do you accept the fact that, say, the bill that came out of the Finance Committee, which was scored by CBO as saving money against the deficit, do you believe that?
I don't know. I'll have to see it on this next go-round, because I think you'll be seeing a merger of the two bills, and it'll be altogether different. I don't think people outside the Beltway believe scoring. What I have to do is decide how close do I believe it is to being accurate. Is it going to be 5% off, or is it way off? And I don't know the answer to that on that scoring. And because I knew that wasn't going to be the final version and I wasn't going to have a vote on it, I didn't do the kind of analysis that you can be sure I'll do on the product that's going to be coming out in the next week or so.
Is it necessary, in your view, that at least one Republican support a bill that you would support in the end?
I said it's desirable. It adds legitimacy, and people jumped on me when I said that, because there's some people who don't want anything to be bipartisan around here. But I really was saying the same thing that the late Senator Pat Moynihan was saying when he said landmark legislation ought to have two-thirds vote of the Senate. And if you go back and you look at Medicare, you go back and look at landmark legislation that passed, whether it's the civil rights or whatever it is, you'll see that it generally has not just partisan support, but fairly significant broad-based support. That's why I think it would have more legitimacy if you have something that has broad-based bipartisan support.
Does that mean that if Olympia Snowe, who, as you know, supported the bill in the Finance Committee, turns against the bill on the floor and no Republicans support it, that you turn against it too?
No, not automatically. It'll depend on the bill. But my point of legitimacy is that it's with legitimacy with the public. We're already so divided. The hostility that exists today outside of the Beltway is unbelievable, and part of it is because of the partisan divide. And if we're ever going to bring about a resolution of that, this would be a great start at the beginning here, and or otherwise it's going to continue. But
So
no, I don't think it has to be to get my vote. I would prefer it, and I think it'll have more credibility and legitimacy outside of the Beltway if it has bipartisan
So
support.
it sounds like some of your reluctance or caution is not really about the individual items in the bill or the substantive issues in the bill. It is having enough people to join together in it that it is seen by the public in a certain way.
It would be helpful to have that. There's no question about it as far as I'm concerned. It would not have to have it to get my support. I would not call the stimulus package as having robust bipartisan support. We had to have those votes to get it passed. So I just think that if we can begin to bridge that partisan divide, particularly on this legislation, because it is landmark, that it'll be much more readily accepted by the public. Right now, I think it's looked at as strictly a partisan issue and will be resolved in a partisan way.
And what do you say to those skeptics on the left who say that moderates like yourself simply want their hands held or political cover before they'll support the bill?
Has nothing to do with whether I would vote or not. I'm a big person. I can make my own decisions. I just think it's about the public. It's not about me. I want the public acceptance of this to be something that isn't going to be questioned later. As far as I'm concerned, if the bill has the qualities in it and the pieces in it that I think are important, then I can vote for it. If it doesn't, I can also vote against it. It has nothing to do with what others do on the committee.
Now, if that legitimacy conveyed by bipartisanship is important, why not prefer the Olympia Snowe triggered public option to the opt-out? She said today, again, that she couldn't support an opt-out, but she does support a triggered public option, meaning it would come later if the insurance market failed. Why doesn't that automatically, her position, make that a better choice for Democrats to pursue?
Well, look, the leader made the decision as to what kind of an option to have in the legislation.
But which of the two would you prefer?
Well, I'd prefer the trigger. But in addition, I would even prefer more a state option where the states could opt to have their own state option, because then you have 50 states working on it, and as far as I'm concerned, Jefferson was right. They are the 50 laboratories of democracy, and I just think you get a better overall result, because if there's a mistake made, it's made by one of the 50 states, not by the entire country. And plus best practices would develop, so that's my preference. The second preference is the trigger.
The other big priority the president's pursuing this year is energy climate change legislation. He wants to cap carbon emissions. Democrats on the Hill are pretty clear that you're opposed to what the president wants to do. Is part of your thinking on this when you consider health care and energy, well, I'll oppose him on energy, but then I'll support him on health care. I can't go against him on both of those things.
No, I don't look at it that way. I look at them individually. Now, I'm not against anything that the president might want to do on energy. After all, I've been supportive of alternative sources of energy, whether it was in a previous energy legislation, the stimulus package, the budget, wherever it's been. What I don't support is the cap and trade approach. I'll look at cap without regard to trade. And why? Well, because in the Midwest we have a significant amount, as a matter of fact, overwhelming amount of our electricity is the result of coal-fired generation. So the states in the Midwest pay a disproportionate cost associated with the trade portion. They have to buy permits to emit. That money then goes for other sources. It doesn't really go to the people of the state of Nebraska.
But now, what about the argument that some of that purchase of permission to emit will come from farmers, and that farmers will benefit because utilities will come and buy the ability to emit carbon from the farmers, and the farmers will get cash in their pockets.
Well, I haven't been able to sell that argument to my farmers, and I don't think they're going to buy it from anybody else. I think at the end of the day, the people who turn the switch on at home are going to be disadvantaged. Nebraska is the only state with 100% public power. And so where these are municipal governments, they don't have the ability to go and get favorable tax treatment for certain kinds of investments. Consequently, you're going to see a higher increase in the cost of electricity rates in Nebraska, simply because the utilities will have to put that cost that they have for buying the permits right into the cost of power. As you turn on the lights, the electricity will cost more. Store owners, the same thing. Manufacturers, the same thing. And I don't think the farmers or the ranchers necessarily buy the argument that it'll all be offset. And I don't know why we want to create a system that sustains Wall Street once again. If we want to stop emissions, then we ought to be focusing on the cap side of it and find a reasonable period of time to meet the goals and the benchmarks along the way of CO2 emissions reduction. And if you do that, the cost of doing that will, according to the utilities in Nebraska, will be somewhere around the cost of inflation. So if we want to stop, I don't understand buying permits to emit. If we want to get out of the CO2 business, let's get out of the CO2 business.
The NBC Wall Street Journal poll this week asked Americans, would you be willing to pay higher energy costs in order to cap greenhouse gas emissions? The public was closely divided, but you had a plurality saying, yes, I would be. I think 48% said yes, I would be.
Did they say how much they would be willing?
No.
Would they go up 25%? And I've heard that in Nebraska, that might be what Nebraskans have to pay. Well, I'll bet you 10 to 1, if they put that in the poll, would you pay 25% more? You'll get a different answer.
So, in your view, that is not a trade-off worth making, higher energy costs for capping emissions?
No, I just said a higher...
Depends on how much higher.
Depends on how much higher, and whether it's in the business of capping the emissions over a period of time, or whether it's a cap and trade scheme. The cap and trade scheme costs more in Nebraska, and just can't support it. It costs more in North Dakota, and I believe that North Dakota, my colleagues from up there have major problems with it, almost all across the Midwest.
Do you believe that a cap and trade system can pass the Congress in this session of Congress?
No.
So you think that this is simply playing out the string on legislation that's not ultimately going to become law?
Well, I don't know about
the
that.
debate in the Senate.
The debate at the present time, but that happens all the time. I mean, once you find out what the lay of the land is among your colleagues, then you can decide whether you go forward with this, you modify it. There have already been some efforts by Senator Kerry to look at alternatives, and an op-ed piece with Senator Graham is a perfect example of that. Senator Kerry is reaching out to all of us. I've spent time in his office sitting down, talking to him about it, my concerns. I think he understands, and hopefully they'll be looking for alternative ways of dealing with this. But in terms of a cost associated with capping over some period of time at a reasonable cost over a rational period of time, I think can be supported.
Two things before I let you go. You mentioned Wall Street.
Mm-hmm.
President Obama's got an ambitious proposal to re-regulate Wall Street and the financial industry. Do you support his proposal? Do Nebraska businesses support his proposal? And what do you think is going to happen to it?
Well, first of all, I think everybody believes that we ought to do something to regulate Wall Street. There may be different opinions about how far you go and what you do. I would say that I would support certain parts of his proposal. I don't see having this consumer protection agency, creating a new agency is necessary. I think
you're against that.
At this point in time, knowing what I know, I am. That doesn't mean it can't be modified and scaled back or put in some other format, but as it is right now, I can't support it.
So you're with Wall Street on that? Because Wall Street doesn't want that finance.
Well, but not for the same reason. maybe Wall Street doesn't want to be regulated. I just want to make sure that regulation is tied more to the kinds of problems that they're seeking to solve. My experience with government, from the time I was governor to being here, to the time I was insurance director in Nebraska, that when an idea like regulation comes out, there are an awful lot of people that have their own agendas. They've been just waiting for this opportunity to come rolling something out like this. It doesn't necessarily mean they're all in government. They can be outside interests as well. And they come rolling along and they want to load it up, and while we're at that, let's do this too. I think there's some of that in this legislation, but I support the effort, and those areas that I don't support, I will seek to modify. I want to be constructive in the process, but I don't have to take it carte blanche. I don't have to take it all. I think there's a little bit of a cafeteria approach here that can be undertaken.
Political sports question to close. There's been a little controversy this week about the White House basketball court. President Obama's played with guys only on the court. Now, you come from a state that values sports a lot. I know it's more football than basketball. Do you see anything wrong with what President Obama's doing? Is there a hostile work environment created by the fact that he only plays basketball with guys in the White House court?
I doubt it. You know, I mean, I'm sure that he's like anybody else. He would have White House women come and play with him too if they wanted to. We have a softball team here, and it's co-ed through and through, so we don't have that problem, and he could probably solve his by inviting some of the girls to come down and see if they'll play basketball with him as well. I mean, I think it's perfectly good offer on his part.
You think this is a non-issue?
I think it's a non-issue.
Thanks for talking with us.
My pleasure. Thanks.